Okay, thank you. Normally says that. Recording in progress. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Breckland Planning for today. We'll go straight on to our agenda. Oh no, we won't. I'll do my housekeeping first. That's in my scratchy little writing here. Okay, first thing, fire exits. Fire exits are quite clearly marked, these two doors on my left-hand side. That's what I was waiting for. I done it and I didn't hit it. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Breckland Planning for today. Those who are in the room and those who are listening throughout the country. Could I first of all start, because I'm so efficient, start with my general housekeeping, which I've got fire exits on my left-hand side, these two doors here. There's one at the end of the corridor past the lavatories, and of course the entrance door where you came in this morning. There are no tests down for today, so if we hear the alarm, we will treat it as genuine. And all you have to do is follow these lot because they run really fast when the building's covered in flames. Okay, and we wait in the car park for all the beefy firemen to turn up. Okay, terrific. Mobile phones and various devices, could I ask you to make sure they're switched to silent? If you decide that you want to carry on your business and it disturbs my meeting, then I will fine you and I will take some money out of you to give to the chairman's charity, which is, Peter? Adult mental health. So your money will be going to a good charity, and it's going to be a tenner. I'm going to get a tenner out of you, even if I have to get the assistance of another member to hold your ankles and shake you upside down. So make sure they're switched off. That's all I say. Presentation. As each item is raised, I have a list of people who are wishing to speak, which I will ask you to come and sit on the right-hand side. The officer will give the presentation, and I will control when we are doing the various items. And if you are speaking, you've got your allotted time and your time is finished and you're still talking, you will hear the bell. It means sum up. It means just finish that sentence. Don't go on for another 15 minutes because I have the power to switch your microphone off anyway. You know, it's just the power just goes to my head and I will switch you off so you can chat away and no one will listen to you. Introductions, let me introduce my team. On my left-hand side, I have Mike Horn, who is the council solicitor. At the far end, we have Simon Wood. I know he's got a title, but as far as I'm concerned, he's the bigger boss. He's the bigger the boss. On my right-hand side, I have my boss, which is Rebecca Collins. She is my chief planning officer. I also have, let's have a look here. We've got Chris Hobson, and hiding up behind here, we have Lisa O'Donovan. We should have other officers joining us for some of the other items. At the back, I have Becky Harris, who is my usher for today, and also part of our planning team. And in front, we have Ruth Tudge, who is doing our minutes for today and making sure we all behave ourselves. I think that's it. I'm not going to introduce my members because they know who they are. So starting off, item number one is the minutes. I judge you've all read those minutes and I can confirm them as read. Thank you very much. Do you have a sheet for me to sign or can we do that later? Do it later, thank you. Item two, apologies and substitutes. Do we have any at all, Ruth?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Atterwill and Councillor Clark.
Sorry, Councillor
Atterwill and Councillor Clark.
Oh, Clark,
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry.
That's the one I didn't get. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. And no substitutes today? No, thank you. Okay, item three, declarations of interest and representations received. I will take them as each item is raised. Item four, chairman's announcements. Just to remind members, and I'm pleased to see that many of you have responded, just to remind you of the site visit on Monday the 25th to Griston. So thank you for all those who have confirmed you will be there, but just to remind you to make sure it's in your diary. And just one more thing, I'm only a handful of days before I'm off to Canada after talking about it for so long. And for those of you who don't understand, my son and wife and my two lovely granddaughters emigrated to Canada a year and a half ago, and I'm off to see them finally. So I'm going to squeeze my granddaughters for at least a day and a half. Super. Okay. Item 5, request to defer applications included in this agenda. Do we have any at all?
Yes, please, Chairman. We request to defer item 9B, which is 19 Church Street in Dereham. We have requested some additional information and we await that information.
Okay, thank you. Item 7, we have a local plan update. That's over to you, please, Simon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So just to update members on the status of various streams of work associated with the local plan update. The call for sites, as you will all be aware, ended on the 20th of May. And just to highlight that we received 278 submissions in relation to residential development, 17 different submissions in relation to economic development, and 66 submissions in relation to local green spaces. The team are currently working through collating those and redacting the private information to allow us to put those on the website as raw data in the next few weeks. We have papers on the partial review of policy INFO3, as well as a paper following the consultation exercise on the statement of community involvement, going to Cabinet on the 25th of July. Those papers will be the subject of an all-member briefing, which you should all be aware of, to be held this Friday at 3:30 in this room here. So hopefully I'll see quite a few of you members at that meeting. And finally, we're just finalising the figures in relation to the 5-year housing land supply, Chairman, and we hope to be able to publish that within the next few weeks and bring it to the next available committee for information. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Any questions at all? Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll just, Simon mentioned the 5-year land supply. Is this nutrient neutrality environmental thing that's come in, is that going to impact on that for you? Is it making it more difficult for you? Or will you be able to work that in over the coming months?
Nutrient neutrality has certainly slowed down the granting of planning permissions within the catchment area and the development of sites within the catchment area. I think it's unlikely that it will have an impact on the 2021-22 figures. It's more likely to have an impact on the 22-23 figures.
Any other questions at all? No, thank you. Okay, moving swiftly on. Thank you very much, Simon. We move on to item 8, which is deferred applications, and we have item 8A at Deptford, Deersleep, 38 Norwich Road, which is 3PL 2022-0112F, and we have speakers for that. We have Tracy Spencer, who's the agent. Are you here? Would you like to come and sit on the right-hand side, please? We were going to just throw this out and make you go all the way home again, but we didn't. Yes, I know. This.
Chairman, you haven't dealt with item 1 on the agenda.
Sorry?
You haven't dealt with the minutes of the previous meeting.
We did at the beginning. Yes. Yeah. Claire, could you get a ballpoint pen and just poke Robert when he does start to snore? Thank you. Okay. So well done for being here all the way from Leeds this morning. So thank you. Okay, I hand over to Rebecca, please, to take you through this one.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is application 8A on the agenda, Deersleep, 38 Norwich Road in Thetford, for the demolition of the remaining part of the public house, the Ark Public House, and the erection of a 2-storey 66-bed care home with associated works. This application was deferred from the previous planning committee on the 7th of June due to a query over, easy for me to say, query over the ownership certificate submitted with the application. This matter has now been resolved and the determination of the application can proceed. So with regards to the application site, this is the application site shown in aerial for you in just outside the town centre of Thetford, where the Ark Public House previously stood on this site. So as you can see, it clearly lies within the settlement boundary of Thetford. Shall I keep going? Sorry, it clearly lies within the settlement boundary of Thetford. And this is the application site delineated by the red location plan that you can see on the screens in front of you. So the proposal is to build a 66-bed care home in this H-shaped formation that you can see on the screen in front of you, primarily with car parking and access off Norwich Road to the north of the site, and then to have some private amenity space for the residents of the care home only to the rear of the site. You can see that the site has been carefully positioned within the application site, so there is good spacing between the residential properties to the east and west, or southeast and northwest of the application site. And the H-shaped formation does allow for greater separation distances for the two properties, particularly to the centre of the site, to the east and west, as these are single-storey properties. The actual proposal is for a two-storey development. So this is the layout of the application site. Members will note from the officer report that the layout has been slightly amended in this element to the east side of the application site, closest to this residential property, which is single storey. So the amendment here was to slightly reduce the car parking provision by 4 number spaces. That was to pull the car parking provision away from this residential property. So any noise and disturbance from people using those car parking spaces, driving in and out of them, headlights, etc., was pulled further away from those residential space, that residential property, to protect their amenity. There will be boundary treatment in this location, including landscaping as well, that will also serve to protect that property. Members will note from the officer report that that reduction in 4 spaces does actually take them below our standards in our parking TRO2 policy. However, the requirement is 34 spaces. They're providing 30 spaces. We are satisfied with that 30 space provision as officers in the regards of the proximity to the town centre. The applicants have also submitted evidence to demonstrate that there is no need for any more than 30 spaces, and in fact they find that their car parking provision across other units, care home units, is significantly less than 30 spaces. And also, and most importantly, the Highways Authority have no objection to the application on that basis. So on balance, we consider that the reduction of 4 spaces protecting the amenity of neighbouring property is more important than provision of car parking spaces, particularly given the location of the development. So this is the elevation plans of the proposed unit as proposed within the application. So the top is the north elevation. This is your front elevation. You'll note from the officer report that the historic buildings officer has commented on the application. He's commented on the application with regards to the Ark Public House and whether he considers that to be a non-designated heritage asset. You'll note from the officer report that he's provided a detailed assessment of that, and he does not consider that the existing partially demolished Ark Public House to be a non-designated heritage asset, and therefore on that basis we're not seeking to protect that building from heritage terms. And also importantly to the application, this is not a listed building, the Ark Public House, nor is the site in a conservation area. So in heritage terms, we don't have to consider section 15 or your heritage policies in your local plan. But you will note that the historic building officer did consider that there could be more verticality to the building, and the building has been redesigned with projecting panels and render panels, and the top elevation is the northern elevation facing the street. And we are satisfied that that does give the building more verticality and that the design is acceptable for the surrounding area. You'll also note when you see some photos in a minute that the majority of the surrounding area is 2-storey development, and the building itself is also 2-storey development. And obviously I've already explained how they've addressed the single-storey properties to the north and south by having that H-shape arrangement, the distances from the boundary which exceed over 18 metres and up to over 40 metres on one side, and also the angle at which they're set with the recesses in the central element to protect the amenity of those properties. Also, while we've got the elevations up, members will note the east and west elevations. So from the centre elevation and the bottom elevation, there are 2-storey glazed panels in that central, like H central section of the building. These are discussed in detail in the officer report about the potential for perception of overlooking to those neighbouring properties. And it is considered that because they're in the recesses of the building, that the projecting two-storey elements of the building, and because of the distance involved, that there will be no impact on amenity or perception of overlooking from those elements. And you can clearly see that from this layout. So the distances involved where those two properties sit in terms of that H shape increases the distances, and also the angle at which they're set. And we've got some photos of the side elevations of those properties to show you. So those are the elevations of the building as proposed. You'll also note from the officer report that these first floor side windows, a condition has been added to ensure that they are obscure glazed. Those windows are to landings of the central layout, and therefore they can be obscure glazed to ensure that there's no overlooking of east and west properties. This is the proposed ground floor layout plan. The floors similarly mimic each other. So you have this central element of social space, which is in that glazed space, and then you have bedrooms in the wings either side. And there's 66 beds as set out. And this is again, very similar proposed first floor. Obviously at ground floor, at the main entrance, there's a reception area. So the applicants have provided some artist impressions of what the building might look like in the streetscape. So I've got these artist impressions to show you. So this is the front of the building looking out onto Norwich Road. And again, this is the front of the building looking out onto Norwich Road with the access off of Norwich Road in its current position and its proposed position. And we've got the rear elevation. So we're now panning around to the rear elevation, and it shows that the gardens behind, these would be private gardens to serve only the residential care homes. There is no provision of public open space with this development because it is a C2 care home use. So it's not a residential use, it's a private use. And again, we've got some artist impressions to show those side elevations. So of note is what I said previously, that those two first floor windows will be obscure glass. And then to show the staggered effect in the top without the trees that exist currently on site, and in the bottom below, just to show you how the amenity of those two residential properties either side would be protected. And then I just have some site photos of the site. So obviously you can see on the right hand side of the screen, you can see the Ark Public House. You can see the partial demolition works that have taken place to that side extension of the Ark. And then obviously on the opposite side of Norwich Road, you can see the two-storey Victorian terrace, which stands just showing the character of Norwich Road. And we're going to pan round the site as it stands at the moment. Sorry, just before I pan round, you can see the 1 meter, you see the pole and the lighting column. There's a flint wall at the frontage of the site. You can just see there, short 1 meter high flint wall. You'll note from the officer report that there has been some desire to retain that flint wall. However, the Highways Authority and the Town Council do want the footpath widened at the frontage of the site for passing pedestrians. And therefore that would result in that flint wall needing to be removed. And therefore, on balance, given that the Historic Buildings Office has no objection to the removal of the flint wall, that it would serve to widen the footpath for the benefit of wider pedestrian uses. It was a request of the Highways Authority, and we are not in the conservation area. We have said that the removal of that flint wall would be acceptable in this instance, and that we have got a condition to control boundary treatments across the remainder of the site, and we could look at appropriate materials with those boundary treatments somewhere else on the site if appropriate. You'll also note from the officer report that the police commented on having a boundary treatment at the frontage of the site, and that the applicants have made comments that it is their proposal to have an e-rail fence at the frontage of the site with appropriate planting behind it. That has a twofold benefit of one, seeking to landscape the car parking area and demarcate the private area from the public area to mimic that was desired by the police comments. So like I say, we're panning around the application site. So you can see the Ark, with the remainder of the Ark Public House in the distance. And you can see the two-storey neighbouring property red brick. That is the other side of the bungalow, which is immediately adjacent to the eastern side of the site. And the lower building, which almost appears as a garage, that is the bungalow behind the close bordered fence which exists on that boundary. And we're panning around the site again. So just to the left-hand side of your screen, you can better see that two-storey property, which is typical of the building heights in this location. And then the roof, the grey roof that you see is the single-storey building, largely hidden behind the existing boundary treatment. These trees in the centre of the site will go, and the tree officer has no objection to the proposed tree works within the application. Trees at the boundaries of the site will be retained and protected and enhanced in places. So these trees at the boundary of the site will stay. We're just panning around the application site, and just into the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the single-storey garage of the bungalow to the west of the site. And here you can see we're at the other side of the trees, still in the application site, trees to retain, and there's the single-storey bungalow to the west of the application site, with the garage intervening and its 1.8 metre close border fencing before you get to the application site. And finally, just panning round to the western view along Norwich Road, and these flint cottages face onto the application site, two-storey, but are quite a distance away from the building as proposed, and actually would overlook the car parking. And then this is immediately opposite the application site. So you can see, you know, it's, you know, the majority of the character of the area is two-storey development. I'd just like to go back, so sorry about the flicking, to a layout. So just to run through some of the aspects of the application, members will note that, apologies, since the writing of the report, members will note that we have had additional information from our, I'll get there in a minute. The applicants have submitted additional information to address the ecology and LLFA concerns which are set out in the officer report. The lead local authority have unfortunately not responded in time for the committee. So you'll note from the officer recommendation that we've asked to delegate the matter of flood risk to officers on the basis that we get no objection from the lead local authority following the additional information that we've received. But we have received comments from our ecologist who has no objections from the application subject to conditions that would obviously be applied. The Town Council have obviously commented on the application and agree in principle to the application subject to the footpath widening, which I've already run through. They would like to see the on-site pillbox retained, a heritage display on site to explain its heritage. Those matters will be conditioned. In addition to this, the Town Council also asked for a bus shelter at the frontage of the site. However, we would consider as officers there's limited justification for this given the limited mobility of the future occupants of the site, and that this hasn't been a request of the Highways Authority, and therefore in this instance we haven't asked for a bus shelter. There are no objections from the Highways Authority subject to conditions which will be applied, and there are no statutory objections apart from that which I've mentioned of the LLFA, which additional information has been requested, and we seek to defer that. There are 14 representations from local people, which are summarised in the report, and members will note there is a supplementary report setting out one additional representation that was received since the application. Members will also note that in the report there are comments from CAMRA that are set out in detail in the officer report. However, their principal concern is the loss of the public house and the lack of a viability report to demonstrate the principle of that loss. And I'll just talk about the principle of development now. So members, your local plan sets out policy COM04. Policy COM04 seeks to protect community facilities. And that policy clearly sets out that there is only an acceptable loss of a community facility if an alternative facility is available or there's a viability assessment to demonstrate that that unit is no longer viable. I will remind you members that's an or policy, not an and policy. And therefore we have made this assessment on the basis that there are alternative facilities close to this existing public house site, and therefore the loss of the Ark public house is acceptable on that basis. There is other figures listed in the report, but of importance, the Black Horse Public House is 520 metres away from this site. There are obviously other public houses available in Thetford for use. And it is on that basis that we consider that the proposal to demolish the public house is in accordance with policy COM04 of the local plan, because it's not an and policy. However, you will note from the officer report that the applicants have submitted some information to say that the pub site has been available since 2019 and there's been no interest in that, and therefore they don't consider it to be viable. But on the basis of whether the principle is acceptable in this location, we've assessed it against COM04, and that on the grounds that there's alternative facilities, we think that's in accordance with COM04 and the demolition of the public house can go. Members, there are also other material considerations which we consider important to take into consideration, which is that arguably a care facility, a C2 care facility, is a community facility. So you're replacing an existing community facility with a different community facility, but also, and more importantly, this proposal for care is supported by policy HOW 09 of your local plan. Policy HOW 09 is your specialist housing policy, which supports the provision of care homes in sustainable locations, particularly your market towns. And also it is important to note that our district-wide survey shows that we've got a significant shortage of care across the district. So that is another material consideration also. Sorry, I just wanted to say about the C2. So members will note from the officer report, I've already mentioned that we're not asking for public open space provision off the back of this site. You'll also note from the officer report that we're not asking for any other planning obligations from this site. That is your GI RAMS payments in terms of your recreational impact and also affordable housing provision. This is set out in the officer report with the relevant case law. However, the relevant case law sets out clearly that where you've got a C2 provision, not a C3 provision, then you're not creating dwelling houses, and therefore they're not subject to dwelling houses contributions such as your affordable housing, your open space. And because of the limited recreation from this development, this is specifically excluded from the GI RAMS documentation. So on that basis, we are not asking for planning obligations from this application. And with regards to nutrient neutrality, the applicant has demonstrated that the site sits well outside the SAC catchment areas, and also that any foul water from this development would not drain into those SAC catchment areas. So we have stage 1 screened out nutrient neutrality on that basis, and members, you are able to determine the application at this time. So in summary, we have recommended this application for approval subject to conditions with no planning obligations, but also subject to no objection being received from the lead local flood authority. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Tracy Spencer, please, who's the agent. You have 3 minutes. Are you wishing to speak or are you here for question? Yeah, fine. No. If you'd like to switch. If you like to switch your microphone, oh yeah, okay. You're allowed to speak now. That won't cost you a tenner, I promise you. Keep pressing, you got it. 3 minutes, please.
Hi, good morning, I'm Tracy Spencer, I'm the agent for the application working for LNT. I'm the agent for the application working for LNT Care Developments. As the officer's reports be very detailed, I just wanted to cover some matters that have been raised, mainly the concerns by local residents and CAMRA to the loss of the public house. As mentioned in the report, we are in the unfortunate position of being the developer following the previous unauthorised partial demolition of the public house. We were not involved in the demolition or had interest in the site when these works were carried out. Roche, the chartered surveyors originally marketing the site, have provided some information around the history of the sale. The first round of the bidding process in December 2018 received 8 bids. 5 were for residential development, 2 were for care homes, and 1 was for a retail drive-through development. No pub operators on a local, regional or national level made a bid for the property. The site was purchased by investment group Chippy Capital Limited in 2019, with the partial demolition taking place in August 2019. Our offer to purchase the site subject to planning approval was made in November of 2021. No further offers or interest to maintain the use as a public house has ever been made. And as Rebecca has mentioned, the policy COM04 of the local plan seeks to protect community facilities unless it can be demonstrated that there is no local need for the facility or there is equivalent facility to serve the community in an accessible location. And our analysis of the existing public houses within Thetford has been provided and is agreed at officer level that there is sufficient alternative provision to meet the day-to-day needs of the community. The loss of the public house is in accordance with this policy and considered acceptable in principle. In relation to the comments from the ecologists, as Rebecca said, we provided all the surveys and these are all now being accepted, and it's confirmed that no reptiles and no bats were found within the building. As Rebecca's also said, we're still waiting for comments back from the Leeds Local Flood Authority. We were hoping to have them before today, but we have provided all the information they required, so hopefully that should be acceptable. And finally, in support of our application, we are a company that specialises in building care homes, and we also have a sister company, Ideal Care Homes, who operate a number of the homes we construct. This provides us with a wealth of information on the operation of care homes and the suitability of the location for attracting residents and staff for the home. From our research, we have identified a need for this type of care. The home will provide an additional choice of accommodation within the area to meet the needs of the growing elderly population. It will also provide employment for the local community and remove a building that was considered an eyesore, attracting unwanted behaviour over the past few years. Hopefully it's provided a bit more information relating to the loss of the pub and the need for the proposed care homes. That wasn't 3 minutes, was it? Thank you.
I've only got a few things to say. That's what you said. 3 minutes and 5 seconds. Yes, it was. You don't know when you get going, you don't know how much you talk. Okay, it's open to questions from members. Councillor Gill. Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Gill. I'll take Councillor Kybird first, please, as a local ward rep. Thank you.
I'm not actually a local ward rep, but I had made some comments at the application stage which have been addressed in the officer's report. They were matters of detail and not they don't predetermine me in any way. I think this is an acceptable development for the site and has been worked up and significant objections addressed. 2 questions. Presumably the surface water drainage will require a SUD system, and presumably the ecology might include back boxes, hedgehog gaps, and possibly swift boxes. Thank you.
The bat boxes and swift boxes were included in the ecologist's report, so they will be incorporated into the building. And we provided additional information relating to we had to do further soak away testing, so we have followed the SUDS procedure, and there will be an attenuation tank for the surface water included within the design.
So I'm not sure there's only a combined sewer in that vicinity. So the attenuation, where will that surface water discharge after the attenuation tank?
Sorry, I couldn't turn it on then. It will then connect into the combined sewer, I think. The attenuation tank will maintains the surface water and then slowly.
I mean, I do know that combined sewer under heavy rainfall floods and lifts covers and discharges raw sewage sort of between that point and the river.
Yeah, thank you for that point, but the LFA will obviously field all that off. Thank you for your time. I've got Councillor Gilbert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's very much along the same lines as Robert just spoken about. I was disappointed that we haven't got a response from the lead local flood authority. And also when I was looking through the conditions, I couldn't see any mention of it in there either. Could we attach a condition that says no work on site shall commence until agreed surface water and foul sewer works are agreed?
Yeah, so when the lead local authority responds, it's usually one of two standards. One, they ask for additional information to be submitted prior to development commencing, or secondly, they will discharge the drainage scheme as submitted by the applicants, and those works will have to take place prior to commencement. So yes, there will be a condition, but we will take our advice on how that condition is worded from the LLFA.
Thank you. Any other further questions? No. Oh, Councillor Kybird again.
Just to add, I would be surprised if the percolation tests show that the site is unsuitable for a SUD system.
Okay. We'll take that. Duly noted. That wasn't a question, but anyway. Okay, thank you. Okay, so on this item, we're now going to take the vote on this item at 8A on the deferred items of 3PL 2022-0112F, Thetford Deers Leap. Your officer's recommendation on this is one of approval. Can I have a show of hands, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Yeah, approval subject to the amendments that you put forward. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, and yeah, officers been given delegated authority. Okay, thank you. Can we move on to item 29A? At Thetford, I've got Mac McDonald, the chairman of the Safer Thetford Action Group, if you'd like to come and sit on the right-hand side. I've got Alexandra Webster, who's the agent, thank you, on the right-hand side, and Councillor Jane James, who's the ward representative for this item. Make yourselves comfy. Yeah. Okay, all right, I hand over to Naomi, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application seeks full planning permission for a change of use from Class EB former bank to an adult gaming centre sui generis and associated alterations to the shop front. So the application site is located at 36 King Street in Thetford. It is within a designated settlement boundary, as well as being a town centre location, primary shopping area, and within a designated conservation area. You can see it there on the location plan. There are several listed buildings nearby, including grade 2 and grade 2 star listed. The site is located within flood zone 1. So these are the existing floor plans and the proposed floor plans. And the existing and proposed elevations, you can see some minor alterations there to the shop front. And these are the site photos. And again, just so you can see further down the street, the building in question is with the Merrifields site sign on top there. And then back to the location plan. So in terms of representations, we have received quite a lot of objections to this development, 38 letters of objection. Another one has come in since the officer's report has been written. The main points of concern are listed within the officer report, but it does include no benefit to having it, and that it will stifle the variety of shops, and retail outlets or facilities such as doctors, surgeries, dentists, etc. should be encouraged over gambling establishments. Large building which could be put into better use, and there are other reasons with bullet pointed within the list. It's also important to note that there has also been a signed petition signed by around 500 people objecting to the proposal. In terms of the principle of the development, It's been assessed against the MPPF and also policy EC05 of the Breckland Local Plan and policy TH2 of the Thetford Area Action Plan. The MPPF provides a definition for town centre uses, which includes retail development, leisure, entertainment and recreation uses. Given the primary purpose of an adult gaming centre is for entertainment and recreational purposes, it is accepted that it would fall into the category of a main town centre use. There have, as already been mentioned, numerous objections to the proposal on the principal grounds. In this particular instance, the proposed town centre location within a key market town in the district is considered an acceptable location for this type of development, as set out in the MPPF. In addition, on the basis that it would bring back into use a building which has been vacant since December 2020, thereby supporting the vitality and viability of the town centre, adding to the footfall within a central location and increasing the opportunity for shared trips. It would also add to the evening economy whilst also increasing employment opportunities for local people. It's therefore considered to be compliant with the objectives of the Breckland Local Plan and the MPPF, which seek to promote the vitality and viability of town centres, including the nighttime economy. The proposal relates to, so in terms of the principle, it's considered acceptable, having regards to the relevant policies as mentioned. In terms of character and appearance and having regard to the conservation area and nearby listed buildings, the proposal relates to the change of use of the building and associated alterations to the shop front. The external alterations proposed are considered acceptable in planning terms and would not have an adverse impact on the existing character and appearance of the area, subject to the inclusion of a materials condition. Given the location of the site within the existing conservation area and near to listed buildings, the Historic Buildings Officer was consulted on the application. No objection has been raised in respect to the proposed works. It was therefore concluded that the proposal will not have an adverse impact on the character and appearance of the Thetford Conservation Area or the significance and setting of the nearby listed buildings, having regard to the requirements of section 66 and 72 of the Planning Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act, as well as policy EMV7 of the Breckland Local Plan and the requirements of the MPPF, subject to conditions. In terms of amenity impact, again, a number of objections were raised with concerns over the impact of the proposal on amenity. The applicant has since offered to reduce the hours of operation. Originally, they proposed 24 hours operation. They have now offered to come in from 7 AM to 2 AM operation. The crime reduction officer has been consulted on the application. Since the officer report was written, they have now responded to say they have no objection to the proposal. In addition, with regards to crime, the contents of the appeal decision submitted with the application are noted. One of the appeals, which involved Brent Police Licensing Unit making comments stating that children and vulnerable persons must be protected against the harmful impact of betting and gambling, which is a licensing objective. The inspector in response stated it would not be appropriate to reject a planning application for legitimate form of use on the basis of an assumption that the premises would not be run in accord with the relevant statutory regulations and risks to problem gamblers, young people and other vulnerable persons would be more directly relevant to licensing and management functions. The inspector concluded, I see no reason why the proposed adult gaming centre should not contribute to the mix of retail and non-retail uses offered within the town centre. Environmental health have also been consulted and advised that they do have some concerns in respect of potential for disturbance to residents in King Street from customers visiting the premises at antisocial hours, although their comments were given before the applicant actually offered reduced operation hours. They said, although King Street is a main thoroughfare, once the shops, bars and clubs close, the area is very quiet and the premises open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week would cause disturbance to residents of King Street by virtue of its customers frequenting the area. Notwithstanding their comments noted above, Environmental Health accept that these concerns could be satisfactorily addressed through the provision of conditions. They therefore recommended approval of the application, providing the development proceeds in line with the application details and subject to conditions to alleviate environmental concerns. The application site is within the town centre. The planning statement submitted in support of the application quotes inspectors' comments in respect to similar applications in different local authority areas. In respect of amenity, it states that such premises are not usually visited by groups. It also states that there is no evidence to suggest that adult gaming centres give rise to crime, antisocial behaviour or are noisy establishments. No alcohol is served at any venue and a Think 25 entrance policy is operated. The local planning authority is also advised that the management of the operation will follow procedures to ensure that patrons of the proposed venue behave in an orderly manner, including entering and leaving quietly. They have since submitted further information to address those points, and that is what the police crime officer responded to say they had no further objections to. So in terms of amenity, in the officer report, there are other PIL decisions. I won't go into all of them, but they are there if you want to have a read through, which address some of the concerns that have been raised by local residents. But overall, the local planning authority consider that the application can be determined in accordance with policy COM3. And in terms of highway safety, no objection has been raised by the local highway authority on the basis of the central location of the site. It's therefore considered to comply with the aims of COM1 and TR2 of the Breckland local plan. Ecology, no ecological information has been submitted. However, given the location and characteristics of the site, as well as the nature of the application, it is accepted that this could be conditioned as part of any forthcoming planning permission. In addition, the application with regards to nutrient neutrality can be safely determined with regards to the Conservation of Species Habitats Regulations 2017. And in terms of flood zone, the application, flood risk, the application is located in flood zone 1, and the application is for a change of use of the building with minimal external works proposed. Given the nature of the application and the location on the site within flood zone 1, it's considered that the proposal will unlikely lead to any adverse impact in terms of flood risk, and therefore it's considered to have due regard to policy EMV09. The application is therefore recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor James, would you like to go first or last? Last, okay, thank you. So I've got Mac McDonald, please, who's the chairman of the Safe Thetford Action Group. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Good morning, Chair, ladies and gentlemen. I am the current chair of the Safe Thetford Action Group. That works with police, community groups, volunteer organisations, looking at the health and welfare of those people in Thetford. Now, as you probably know, Thetford has a 25% very deprived, the most deprived in the country. And that's probably why we're looking at an application of this nature, because those are the kind of people who will frequent it. So that is why there have been so many objections from the community and, particularly from Stag. I understand why the police can't object in some respects, because they are very stuck to procedures and legality, whereas I might be dealing a little bit more with what people actually feel about it and, the heartfelt thoughts. On receiving any application, whether it's licensing or planning, the obvious thing to do is to stick to those guidelines and stay within them. That might not necessarily look at what is best for the people of that area. So I may argue that, licensing, planning, our future town development are all things that are working individually and perhaps not together on this occasion. The future town plans look fantastic with, you know, increased tourism. I might argue this isn't in that scheme. Particularly when we look at things like streetscape. Jones the Butcher is just next door, and that is clearly linked to a heritage, Dad's Army sort of thing. Next door to it now, having a gambling building perhaps doesn't fit with that. For instance, would you go on holiday to Center Parcs, which costs an awful lot of money, by the way, and say, you know what, family, we're going to get ourselves down to Thetford. It's got lots of history. Let's have a look at all that. Let's go and see the Thomas Paine statue just up the road, and we'll go and see if we can find ourselves a fruit machine to play on in a gambling location. It's not something that people are going to look for in a development view. I could argue the benefits and the bad parts of gambling. It's quite clear. It's a bad thing. You know, if you go to any gambling establishment, you'll be given a leaflet that tells you how you must avoid being caught up in gambling. You know, some of the things that it tells you is, hey, gambling's fun. It can be a great laugh. Stay in control. You shouldn't play to escape from worries or pressure. I don't think that piece of paper is going to stop you from doing that. If you're going into a gambling place, you're going to gamble. Before I get to my 3 minutes, I am not the Mary Whitehouse of Thetford. I have lived a life, and you know, I'm up for all kinds of enjoyment for all parts of our society, but we already have one gambling place. If you look at our high streets, it is becoming a monoculture. I don't expect it to be filled with other retail outlets. I didn't repeat, I don't think anything like that. It's in just a minute. But locations, and I understand this is a venue location rather than retail, are the way ahead. My sum up is perception of the council from the people of Thetford is when they've complained about it, and this goes through, this won't be their perception that planning has let them down. It will be that Breckland's let them down, I'm afraid. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Just clear you on. That's okay. Okay, I've got Alexander Webster, please, who's the agent. 3 minutes also, thank you.
Morning, members. You've got before you a comprehensive officers report and addendum report recommending that planning permission be granted. You'll note, as Naomi has pointed out, there's no objection from the Town Council, County Highways, Historic Buildings Consultant or Environmental Health. Neither is there any objection from the Crime Reduction Officer in Norfolk Police, who we've discussed this application with. The application complies with national and your local policies relating to the principle of the change of use in this location. The application site is, of course, the former HSBC Bank in the town centre, and it's not been in a retail use for many years. The withdrawal of banks from our high streets is a well-known phenomenon, as is the move towards increased leisure and experiential uses within our town centres as the amount of retail floor space declines. An AGC is a recognised town centre use in national planning guidance and by many inspectors' appeals. It's an appropriate town centre use which creates jobs and can add to the diversity of uses and the vitality and viability of town centres. The vacant HSBC provides no benefits to Thetford Town Centre. It's a dead frontage and it currently detracts from King Street. In respect to concerns over antisocial behaviour, the applicant, whilst it is a relatively new company, it's comprised of experienced UK-based professionals with significant experience in the AGC industry. Their existing stores are stringently and responsibly run. Just to point out, AGCs are very different from betting shops. They're not the same use in either the manner of operation or their patrons. As the case officer pointed out, the application has been the subject of a sustained campaign of objection, much of which has been commercially focused. We're aware that the agents for Coral and Ladbrokes have objected to the application and that the anti-gambling petition referenced was actually created and promoted by the existing AGC in Thetford. You may therefore consider this is simply an attempt to protect the existing operator's monopoly within the town. Almost all of the objections received and the petition overwhelmingly relate to licensing matters rather than planning matters. As the committee is aware, the planning system focuses on land use planning matters. And as set out in the committee report, concerns over the social impacts of gambling and antisocial behaviour aren't matters relevant to planning. In this respect, it's also important to highlight that the council has already considered the application proposal in respect of antisocial behaviour, the effect on health and gambling addiction, etc., when considering the licence application. In doing so, the council has granted a 24-hour licence that was granted on the 6th of June. This was against the backdrop of the same concerns set out by the objectors and the basis of the petition. As such, not only are those matters not material considerations in respect to this application, but they have already been assessed by the council and found to be acceptable. Just finally, the application is submitted with a noise report which supports the proposed hours of operation. The council's EHO accepts now the 24-hour operation, likewise your planners and other consultees do. However, as the officer pointed out, following further discussions, the applicant has agreed to limit the opening hours from 7 AM to 2 AM. We find that AGCs run by my client are frequented mainly by shift workers who want somewhere to go when they've finished their shift at midnight or 2 AM or 1 AM. On that basis, we'd respectfully request that members support the recommendation of your officers and grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I didn't ring the bell because you said you were finishing anyway.
Thanks.
So- Okay, terrific. Councillor James, please, and you have 3 minutes also. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very mindful that as per the conversations that have already happened, we have the emotive response, but we also have the planning response. And I'm really pleased to see that from the applicant, there has been a mitigation in relation to that emotional response in restricting those opening hours so that it is more in line with the nighttime economy that we are looking to promote within our town centres, because I am mindful, regardless of rose-tinted glasses, the world has changed. Our use of the high street has changed. I welcome the condition within the papers. I believe it's number 6 regarding the use of loudspeaker and that kind of thing in terms of protecting the amenity, because there is residents local there that have had antisocial behaviour happening in an open area, and if we can mitigate that, again, I welcome that. So whilst it is with a heavy heart that I note residents' emotional views to this, I completely pragmatically understand that this is a planning matter, and that given the mitigations that have been offered by the applicant, it is a welcome use of an empty space that actually deters more from our town centre than if it was open. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Caught me out there. I was 1 minute 22. You've got 2 and a bit minutes to go and do something. Right. It's open to questions from members, please. Councillor Crane, Councillor Bowes, and then Councillor Wilkinson. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to ask, there's obviously a lot of retail shops in that street. Are there residential properties above, or are they just used for storage?
Sorry, so the whole building is to be used for the gaming centre. So just to go back to the principle, it says the existing building comprises a basement, ground floor, first floor and second floor. The application seeks a change of use of the whole building, although the AGC itself with customer gaming area would only be on the ground floor with a gaming area of 103 square metres. The basement is proposed to be used for storage associated with the adult gaming use, whilst the upper floors would be used as back office space and also as a regional staff training centre. And that would be conditioned.
Okay, thank you.
That wasn't really what my question was.
Surrounding.
I meant that other shops, are there residents living above the other shops in that street? Thank you.
Sorry, yes, there is on the adjacent building to the left on the first floor, there is a residential property, and to the right, it's a detached building 2 doors down.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bowes, please.
Thank you. Well, yes, the facility may not serve alcohol, but the proposed opening hours or the amended opening hours seem to mean that people can turn out of local pubs and into the gaming centre. There is obviously the potential for that happening, and for the risk of antisocial behaviour rising at that time. So surely the closing time should be the same as the local pub closing times. And is that a condition that we can add if members are minded to approve the application? Thank you.
Okay, sorry, just getting clarification. Could the agent just answer with the thing that the door staff on the gaming facility administer that no one who appears intoxicated is allowed in the building? Have I covered that, or would you like to put it in better words?
I think you've covered it in the operational management plan.
Yeah. Yeah, it literally is a facility that's going to wash its own face. Okay, Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And one of the questions was asked about the residents that are nearby, how close they were. I understand fully what Mr. MacDonald is saying. We're not going to be able to stop gambling. Gamblers will find somewhere to go. Having an extra premises is not going to add to that, I don't think. And I understand what Councillor James is saying as well, with encouraging businesses. The opening hours, would the applicant or the management, I know it's a preemptive question, but if there wasn't a footfall between 12 o'clock at midnight and 2 o'clock, would the management then consider closing?
I understand the management would consider closing. They wouldn't want to be paying staff if there was nobody coming in and out. However, in our other stores, if you call them that, the busiest time is between 12 and 2. As I say, it's mainly shift workers who want to go there when, unfortunately, there's nothing else open for them before they then go to bed. So yes, absolutely, they're not going to keep a unit open if there is no footfall, and I will feed that back to them.
Councillor Cox. Oh, sorry.
Just to mention, not a question, if you forgive me, Chairman. I've got all the faith in the local agencies, obviously monitoring the business, to take the fears away from what the objections we're getting from the public. They're not planning objections, but they're social objections, and I'm fully confident that the agencies monitoring that business, from the police to the licensing, will make sure it's run properly and reassure the residents that that shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you. Councillor Kybird, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Going back in time, we used to have a policy where we had primary and secondary retail areas, and the gambling establishments were directed to the secondary areas. In the appeals history seems to gain support from the NPPF. Does the NPPF recognise that distinction between primary and secondary town uses?
No, I think you covered it off with your start that we used to have, and now it's just a main town centre usage. Sorry. Okay, no first and second tier. Any other questions from members? No. Oh, I always do that. Councillor Gilbert.
Sorry, just very quickly, how many other businesses or establishments are open at 2 o'clock in the area? Do we know?
No, we haven't got a full list.
Are there any?
Looking at Councillor James or Councillor Kybird, but I imagine following the closing time of pubs, there's obviously fast food establishments. There was a nightclub at one time, but I don't know if that's still operational.
ICE is still in operation at 2 o'clock in the morning. I believe that's actually their closing time, hence my comment regarding in keeping with the existing nighttime economy.
Yeah, that's lovely. Could I just mention that this item is primarily at Planning Committee, because at the time it was put forward as a 24-hour operation. Now that was the main rider for this to come to committee. And following on from the chairman's panel, it was then the applicant then corrected their times in line with that. Had they done it the other way about, it probably wouldn't have even come to committee. So that was the main factor of that. and it was felt it wanted to be heard to see if we could come to some form of agreement, but an agreement was met before that came to here. Could I also mention another comment that's come from here, and I shouldn't really do this, but I'm going to, is that we say gamblers are gamblers. You know, they're a terrible bunch. Well, it's like saying anyone who goes to a pub is a drinker. They're not obviously drunkards. They're obviously alcoholics because they go to a pub. That's not strictly true. There is a danger with gambling, but there's also people that enjoy gambling and are very, very responsible. And I'm not going to put it to percentages, and I'm not condoning any of it because I'm not a gambler. My son is. You all are gamblers. Who's not had some money on the Grand National? We all do it. That makes us gamblers. You haven't. Yeah. But you do say it, and we say it in conversation. We probably do mean it. You probably said, if my neighbour parks his car on my driveway anymore, I bet you I'm going to go out there and thump him. Well, we'll take the odds on that. Anyway, I'm not condoning anything, but I just think we should try and keep it at a level score that this is a facility that certain sections of the public are requiring. So just bear that in mind. Sorry. Did you want to say something? Please join in.
I'm really sorry. I just wanted to be really clear to members about Councillor Kybird's comment and how you take that into account with your deliberations. So just to be really clear, members, we still have primary and secondary frontages as set out in your local plan policy EC05. So you have a designated Thetford town centre, and you have primary and secondary frontages. So they still exist because we use the phrase we used to, they still exist, just to be really clear. Just to be really clear, the officer report does set out in the report that this is in the primary shopping frontage. So just to be really clear in that regard. And policy EC05 does say that the primary shopping frontage will mainly comprise of A1 shops, and that the secondary frontage will be a distribution of other uses. So your primary focus with caption in the A1, in your primary shopping frontage, which this is for shops. What I would say to members, it's important for you to consider that there are other uses available within that primary shopping frontage. And then your overriding national policy tells us that this type of use is acceptable in the town centre. So just want to make those points really clear, because in your deliberations, you need to take into consideration that this is the primary shopping frontage, and the primary use of that primary shopping frontage should be A1 shops. However, that doesn't mean there can't be any other use.
Okay. Shut me off. I apologise, Councillor Kybird. You were right. I was wrong, but we've all been corrected and put in our place. Thank you. No more questions. I'm going to take the vote on this item, which is item 9A, 3PL 2022 0223F in Thetford, 36 King Street. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? That is also unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm now going to just have 10 minutes as a coffee break. So we will resume at, well, we're going to resume at 20 past, if that's okay with members. A brief coffee break. Thank you.